Is Bryce Young the right man to lead the Panthers going forward? I'll answer that question among other listener questions on this weekly Friday Mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we continue into off-season mode here on the show. But come the middle of July, I'll be back to your team every day. Our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where come July 19th, I'll be back to answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions once again. We're going to take a little bit of a hiatus when it comes to the weekly Friday mailbag questions. Why? Because starting next week, I'm going to start doing the position breakdowns, which I've done every single summer since I've been doing the show. So no need for your questions. I got it covered, and we'll get to a week before training camp. I'll start answering your questions again. I got a question for this mailbag about special teams, and I told the guy, wait until July 15th when I will answer your questions that you have about special teams in that breakdown. There's plenty of questions that we have about Bryce Young, about a lot of players on the roster that I'm going to try to answer over the next month as I do the position breakdowns. But July 19th, I believe, is when I have the next mailbag scheduled. And, July 26th. Could change, but July 26th appears to be the next time. So it's going to be a while before I answer your questions again. And at this point in time, there's nothing going on. Questions get kind of stale. And it's like, let's move on and do some other things. And I'll let you guys regroup. We'll come back at the end of the summer, and I'll get back to answer your questions throughout training camp. And then once we get to the season, it goes back to Wednesdays. But without further ado, let's do it one last time until the end of July, the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. First question, of course, is about Bryce Young, because this season is going to be about who? Bryce Young. Gio. He asks, his actual football skills aside, do you think Bryce Young is a good fit to lead the Panthers for the next couple of years? The Panthers are typically known for being a physical team. With all due respect, Bryce Young comes across as such a meek, no personality kind of guy. Low-key hate watching him talk to the media. Even his teammates talk about how quiet he is this week. I just can't see him leading this team. Wow. You know, it's so interesting. Anytime anyone says, with all due respect, here comes the disrespect. I believe you, Bryce Young, and this is Gio's words, are meek and have no personality, and I can't stand watching you go do your press conferences, which is weird. Gio, you don't have to watch press conferences. If you hate doing it, why do you do it? Questions I always have for people who complain about things. If you don't like to do it and no one's forcing you to do it, then why are you doing it? He's your quarterback, so I guess you're invested. But damn, dude, choose happiness instead of, I guess, being mad that Bryce Young doesn't have the personality that you want out of your quarterback. Now, the funny thing, too, when you start this off saying football skills aside, because that doesn't matter, right? Forget his football skills. Does he have the personality to be the right guy for the Panthers? Jameis Winston has a pretty big personality. Jameis Winston's known as being a pretty good leader. And did things work out for Jameis in Tampa or in New Orleans? No. Deshaun Watson, who Jadeveon Clowney, who talked about Bryce Young being a quiet guy. He also talked about the quarterback. We're looking at you, and he says he's not quite sure Bryce understands that the rest of the team at the level of the NFL is looking at him to be the guy, to be that dude. He might understand that. But he talked about how Bryce is a quiet guy, but so was Deshaun Watson. And Jadeveon said Deshaun Watson was a baller. Hasn't really been that since he got to Cleveland, but back when he played with him in Houston, that was the case. I think about a guy like Justin Herbert, not known to be a loud person, very quiet, reserved, pretty doggone good. So I don't think you have to have the fiery attitudes of a Peyton Manning, a Tom Brady, hell, even a Phillip Rivers to have success as a quarterback and to be able to lead individuals. You got to be able to just make it happen on the field. So you can't really put the football skills aside. That's really what matters more than anything. You can be a great leader, but if you stink, are they really going to want to follow you? If you can't help them win games, are they going to really want to follow you? And I totally understand where this is coming from. This is coming from the last time the Panthers picked number one and took a quarterback. They had a guy who was 6'5", 245. I hope I'm not shrinking Cam Newton, but they had a physical specimen and an outside the box kind of personality who was the first man in, last man out. I guess maybe Luke Kuechly maybe beat him, maybe left later. Either way, you had that oversized personality, oversized in every kind of way, and we got used to that for a decade. So I understand that's probably where this is coming from. You look at Cam being number one, you look at Bryce being number one, you look at Cam's physical size and attributes, look at Bryce Young's physical size and attributes, you look at Cam Newton's personality, you look at Bryce Young's personality, you look at what Cam Newton did in his rookie record-setting season, and you look at what Bryce Young did in what was the negative as far as record-setting season in his rookie year as the Panthers went 2-15. I totally understand where this is coming from. And I understand the angst. The Panthers put a lot into Bryce Young when they gave up all those assets last year, chief among them, DJ Moore, and I guess in a way, Caleb Williams in this past year's draft. So I understand where you were coming from when you say this, Gio. I'm sitting back here and I'm hopeful that Bryce is going to work out. I believed when looking at the quarterbacks last year that based off of their college careers, he was the best one available. I did say on draft day that looking at this all-star coaching staff, putting that in quotes, folks not watching on YouTube, it would make the most sense to take the most physically gifted quarterback, who was Anthony Richardson, which the Panthers did not do. They took Bryce because they felt like he was the guy who was going to be the most ready and the guy who could win them, in David Tepper's words, multiple Super Bowls. They did not think that Richardson was going to do that, or Will Levis, or CJ Stroud. And of course, right now, they look pretty foolish by not taking Stroud. But I'm willing to give them, I'm not going to say the benefit of the doubt, but I'm willing to just be a little bit more patient before saying, can Bryce Young lead this team? Or do I believe he can? I don't know. I hope he can. I still think that there's something in there. We didn't see nearly enough glimpses as we needed to see. And I thought that Nate Tice, who used to be on The Athletic, now writes for Yahoo, had a really good article that came out on Thursday breaking down Bryce Young's film. And he talked about how a lot of things around Bryce, which we talked about, have been galactically messed up. But also, Bryce, he had his own issues as well, like getting too deep into the pocket, which allowed the outside rusher to go around the tackle. We saw Icky have problems last year and then get to Bryce Young. We saw that he kind of leaned more on those short out throws and that he maybe went a little bit too quick to it. It was too predictable. He had his issues, but also there were some bright spots that we saw. We are hoping Dave Canales can get those bright spots to be more consistent out of Bryce Young here in 2024. I can't say right now with absolute certainty either way whether he is or is not the right guy. I understand the concerns. Now, physically, let's say this: sacked 62 times, got up 62 times. That was one major concern a lot of people had this time last year, maybe even still have. But I haven't heard a lot about, oh, he's too small, can he hold up? Haven't heard a lot about that since last season when he took a pounding. So that is a bright spot and a positive, and in a way, something that was debunked about Bryce Young after one season. Yes, you need to see more. Does he need to have a big personality? No. But he does need to go out there and ball. And if he does, like the dudes at Alabama, they're going to follow him. That's my belief. So we'll see. Just don't watch the press conferences. It makes you that upset. Don't do it. No one's forcing you to do it. I don't think so. Maybe you're getting clockwork orange and they got your eyelids up there and you got to watch all the press conferences. But if you don't, stop being weird and just don't watch him and be mad about things that you have complete control over, like not watching a press conference you don't have to watch. So just hate those kind of complaints. It just makes no sense to me. All right, let's take a pause. I'll come back here and answer the rest of your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on Locked On Panthers. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. And Gio, I hope you're not offended. It's just one of my big pet peeves is people watching something that they don't like to watch and then complaining about it. It's like, don't do it. You don't have to. There's something that just bothers me. So had to get that off my chest. Sorry about that, Gio. Appreciate you writing into the show and your perspective. Clearly, you're not a Bryce Young fan, but we'll see if he can make a believer out of you. And we'll see if maybe you're right to not believe in him this season and probably next season. He's got at least 2 more years. And the hope is that he's not going to just be a good fit for the team the next couple of years, that he can be a good fit for the team for the next dozen of years. That's what the Panthers planned on when they took him last year. So we'll see how all that works out. Let's go to the tight end room, which Dave Canales said on Wednesday when speaking to the media. He feels like they have a really good tight end room. Interesting that he would say that. Wyatt has a question about Ja'Tavion Sanders and said tight end room, asking, do you think that Ja'Tavion Sanders will have a large impact on the team? I personally think he's going to be huge. We haven't had a good tight end in a while, Greg Olsen. And if nothing else, he's a great dump off for Bryce. I have some scary stats for y'all here in answering this question from Wyatt. The last full season Greg Olsen played, like 16 games, last full healthy season he played was in 2016, 8 years ago. That's wild to me. That was the last of his 3 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Had it in 14 when they went 7-8-1, went to the playoffs, beat the Arizona Cardinals in the wild card round, then pushed the Seahawks to the brink there in a divisional round on that Saturday. Cam was awesome in that game. But then in 2015, of course, 15-1, ending in heartbreak. And in 2016 was a tough season to see the Panthers kind of bounce back into, not the gutter, but just not have a great year after it's the Super Bowl hangover. Having to play the Broncos week 1, I swear to God, if they win that game, they don't have the season they have in 2016. But either way, Greg Olsen, last time he played full 16-game schedule for the Panthers was back in 2016. In 2017, he missed 9 games due to a foot injury. In 2018, he missed 7 games due to the same foot injury. And he played in 14 games in his final season as a Panther in 2019. So looking at those last 5 seasons of tight end play combined, just looking statistically at receptions, yards, touchdowns, 2019. Panther tight ends combined had 69 receptions, 744 yards, 3 touchdowns. Greg Olsen led them with 52 receptions, 597 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In 2020, first year of Greg Olsen gone in Seattle, 27 receptions for the Panthers, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ian Thomas was the leader with 20 receptions for 145 yards and a touchdown. So basically, he was the only tight end who could receive the ball on that team. 2021, the Panthers had 38 receptions, 368 yards, and a touchdown combined at the tight end position. Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas are basically the co-leaders. Tremble had like 20 receptions, like 180 yards, and then Thomas had 18 receptions for 188 yards. Neither one of them were spectacular. Go to 2022. 50 receptions combined, 517 yards, 3 touchdowns. So we're getting better. Ian Thomas led with 21 receptions, 197 yards, 0 touchdowns. Tremble had 3 touchdowns that season. Then last year in 2023, got again a little bit better, but still not great. 60 receptions, 561 yards, 4 touchdowns. Tommy Tremble was the top tight end on the team, 23 receptions, 194 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So you can see that since Greg Olsen left, the Panthers have not had as many receptions in that season as they had combined in 2019, as many yards, and only have they surpassed or matched the touchdown total twice over the last 4 seasons without Greg Olsen here in Carolina. Yikes. So it has been as bad as we all have really thought it and watched it to be. I hope that Ja'Tavion Sanders can have a big impact. And I think that with Tremble coming back off of statistically his best year, which still is very unimpressive statistically, that with him combined with Sanders, the Panthers can have a better balance and versatility, a word that Dave Canales has used a lot, but really used about the tight end group on Wednesday when speaking to the media after mandatory minicamp. I think he's going to get an opportunity, absolutely, knowing that we know that Ian Thomas is not that guy. We should know, and I know Tommy Tremble high, people are still waiting. Come on, y'all. He's not that guy either. Can he be a solid tight end 2 in the receiving game and a solid main tight end when it comes to run blocking? Yes. But does he have the skill set that Greg Olsen had? Obviously not. Does he have a skill set that Ja'Tavion Sanders is presenting? No. But he can still be a solid player. I think Sanders comes in. I do think he gets an opportunity because I don't think that they brought in Xavier Leggett I don't believe they brought in Jonathan Brooks or Sanders and those top 101 picks to not come in here and to produce and be a big part of this offense in 2024. So, yeah, I think that's what the case is going to be. Wyatt. Another question coming here from Kyle about training camp. Training camp will be up here in Charlotte, not in Spartanburg at Wofford College. Kyle asking, do you think the team will bond with each other as well with the training camp not being in Spartanburg? The players will most likely be able to go home every night and not be in a college dorm with all their teammates in Spartanburg. They most likely don't have to deal with the distractions of family or home life and just focus on football. I am fairly certain that NFL teams that stay home for training camp, the teams that have like their own facility, that they still are like put up into a hotel and they don't go off and go back home every single night. They're still going to be like insulated. Like that's what's going to happen. They're going to have like it's not sequestered because they still can see people. They're pretty sure the Panthers are going to put them up like a hotel somewhere in uptown and have those guys stay together because they're going to still be going through meetings and they still want to have like that training camp time together. And they were going to have like dorm rooms out there at maybe not even dorm rooms, like a hotel, whatever. There's going to be housing at the facility in Rock Hill, have that not fallen apart. So I'm fairly certain, and I will get some clarity on this, whether that's the case, but pretty sure that they will. And even if they didn't, just listen to Shaq Thompson on Wednesday. He was talking about how the team has really come together, that they've spent a lot of time in that building together voluntarily, mind you, and that the camaraderie has been pretty solid. The energy, the vibes have been great. Now, every team in the NFL is going to be saying that this time of the year, but still, these really happy at how things have come together. I don't think that come training camp that's just going to go away if they're not all there together all the time. Like they're going to be spending basically every day together. Maybe the days where they have off, they can go back home and chill, which is what's been the case. They don't all stay when they have a day off in Wofford, they come back up here and they spend time with family. Then they go back. They're not just sitting there in Spartanburg the whole time, just twiddling their thumbs, hanging out, playing cards. They do go home. They do live their lives a little bit. And I do think that they'll be given that opportunity at certain points in times during training camp. But I do think for the majority of it, which is only like 2.5 weeks, that they'll be together, housed up, and then we'll be allowed to go home after it's like officially over and the preseason is here. That's my thought. I'll have to get some confirmation on whether that's the case. I wouldn't be too concerned about their cohesiveness if they don't, because they don't have training camp at Wofford. Look, dude, the last three, and what has that done in the last couple of seasons? What did it do for them in 23? They went 2-15. What did it do for them in 2022? 7-10. What did they do for them in 2021? 5 wins, 2020, 5 wins, 2019. Was it 6 wins, 18? What has it done for them since 2017? Nothing. They've lost. I don't think that's something to be concerned about at all. So those are my thoughts, but I will, again, try to figure out what the plan is for the players with training camp being here in Charlotte for the first time. All right, one more quick pause. I'll come back and I'll answer the last question you'll have here on the Weekly Friday Mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. The last question was about training camp. This next question and the final question is about the preseason, our favorite time of the year, something that Roger Goodell wants to get rid of. It's not necessarily our favorite time of the year, but it is football. We get to see the guys play, and we can take some bits and pieces and really last year a lot out of the preseason and some of the concerns that you see from those games. Chuck, he asked, after losing, in all caps, all our preseason games in 2023, should we put more emphasis on our preseason record this year? I remember in the past when you encouraged us not to put too much stock in the preseason record, but at the same time, you mentioned how you saw problems in the offensive line and other areas that did continue into the season. Okay, so what's your question, Chuck? If I told you in the past, don't care about the record, but I told you, okay, offensive line, those concerns, those struggles, that is concerning. Then you should probably move forward and feel the same way. Like the Panthers winning preseason games, losing preseason games, it doesn't matter. Still, coming up 2-15 doesn't matter. Coming up 15-1 didn't matter. Has never mattered what the outcome of the game is. They're not playing all their starters in the game. They have dudes who aren't going to be even on the practice squad for a single team in the NFL out there. So why, if your starters play one drive, would you give a rip about whether the team wins or loses the game, other than you just love the Panthers so much or you're a sicko and you're betting on preseason, which you can do over at FanDuel, by the way, America's number one sportsbook. Those are the only reasons you would care. If you're betting on the game, that's the only reason you should care. But you have, typically we see, like last year, the starters are out there for a drive. It was a disaster offensively. Then the next week against the Giants, we saw them for 2 drives. Still not that encouraging. Then after that, you saw them for, I believe, what was a half? Okay, and then they lost the games. So the starters played like 5-6 drives in the preseason, and they lost the games. I don't think there's anything you can take away record-wise. Like if they win the game, great. If they don't, great. It doesn't matter. Now, what does matter is if you see your offensive line like last year getting their ass whooped. And looking at the preseason schedule this year, they have the Jets again. That is something I'm very curious to see what happens when you get to the joint practices. I want to see if Quinn Williams is racking up 11 sacks again. And once you get to the preseason game, the Jets are still going to have a really good defensive line. How does this new look Panthers offensive line hold up? That is something to look at when the Panthers are playing against, like, let's see. Oh man, Patriots don't have good receivers. Buffalo, I mean, they're a team in transition, but I want to see what Dane Jackson looks like. I want to see what this new look secondary looks like against the receivers of New York. And I guess New York would be the one because they have Mike Williams, they really have Garrett Wilson, and they have Aaron Rodgers playing quarterback. You're going to see probably more of them. I don't know how much you're going to see Aaron, though. I don't think he played in the preseason last year, and he probably wouldn't play again this year. Maybe could do him some good considering he didn't really play football last year. Doesn't matter to me. Those are things to care about. That's something to look at. But when it comes to the win-loss record, no. So, Chuck, you answered the question for yourself in your question, saying, I remember you encouraging us not to put too much stock in the record. But at the same time, you mentioned this, you saw the problems in the offensive line and other areas that they continue in the season. If you see problems in the preseason, it's possible those problems could carry over to the regular season. And we saw that last year. The alarm bells went off with the offensive line. I still wasn't trying to overreact because, okay, as alarming it was, one game, the Jets have a great defensive line, and then we did see that it was not great. And in large part, I think, due to the injuries. If Brady Christensen and if Austin Corbett are healthy all season long, is Panthers offensive line as bad as it was last year? No. If Thomas Brown or Frank Reich had any clue what they were doing, and I'll throw James Campen in there, which I don't know, would the offensive line have been as bad as it was last year? No. So more factors went into it other than just talent. You can't have 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards, and have success at all. You can't be missing your starters from the year prior and have success. So that's where I'm at there. So yeah, preseason, win-loss, don't care. Things that you see that happen in the game, positives and negatives, those certainly should be taken into consideration. Not necessarily full consideration, but, just make a note, and don't forget. Because if you saw it then, it's possible you could see it pop up because they're still going to take some time, and they never got up to speed last year, unfortunately. All right, it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, where I'll be back with you. July 26th is when I have the next scheduled mailbag. So going to take some time the next couple of weeks, like really the next month, to do position breakdowns. Next week, got quarterback, running back, wide receiver. After that, wrap up the rest of the offense. And I will be doing at the end of each of the offensive defensive breakdowns, like a state of the offense and defense podcast to kind of bring everything back together. So quarterback on Monday, running back on Wednesday, wide receiver on Friday, then the rest of the offense after that. Getting to then do, like, say, the Carolina Panthers offense, and then got some defensive stuff throughout the majority of July. Then we'll start counting down the days of training camp, get to training camp. Then on the 26th, I'll be back to your mailbag questions. So you should have plenty of questions with me doing the breakdowns and with training camp having started. That will be a great time. I think the next best time to do a mailbag in the middle of the summer, where you guys should be enjoying your vacations and not really thinking about this team that much to where you need to ask a question. That's when we do it. But do continue to listen. by just subscribing, following the show for free on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast, because I'm going to have a lot of good stuff. I hope you enjoy it. I think it's going to be good. A lot of stuff out there about this team, looking at each position individually, all those players within that position group, and how I think that they're shaping up heading into 2024. So excited about that, and appreciate all y'all who have tuned in throughout this offseason. As it's a little bit of a grind, but now time to do all this. Gonna really record a lot of these ahead of time, get them out there, enjoy some free time, kind of get away from everything. But excited about it and happy that y'all are tuning in and giving me support here on Locked On Panthers. So in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll talk to you on Monday as we'll talk about Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, and the rest of the Panthers quarterback groom heading into 2024. Did I just say groom?